Raider Nation, we are back with you. It's another episode of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast alongside the former Raider, former NFL scout, Bucky Brooks. I am Rhett Lewis, and it is mock draft season.
It is mock draft season. It is mock draft season. For all the listeners, I want everyone to know that the 1.0 version of Rhett Lewis's mock draft is up. You can go over to NFL.com.
Yeah.
I think it's /Lewis, and we can
It
find
is.
we can find the mock draft that Rhett dropped. I can tell you, he belabored over his work for a long time to make sure that he got all the picks right. And there's some interesting picks that are included in that. But we want to spend a lot of the day talking about a possibility, according to Rhett, that could impact the Raiders for a long time in a very positive way. Rhett, do you want to kind of let us know, like, what?
Well, I think at first I need like a disclaimer to flash across the screen. This mock draft does not reflect the beliefs of General Manager John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll.
Because this is strictly for entertainment purposes, and the information used here should be viewed as such.
Very good. See, that's what we do here for you on the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. Look, it's about scenarios. It's about possibilities this time of year. There's a reason no one has ever successfully predicted all 32 picks, okay? It ain't never going to happen. So we're just trying to give you some food for thought here, okay?
Just in case.
So I will set this up by laying out what I did for the Raiders in this scenario. Now, you and I here over the course of the last, 6, 7, 8 weeks now, have gone through a bunch of different scenarios for the Raiders, from Ashton Genty to the quarterback to Mason Graham, the defensive tackle. Maybe a cornerback slides in there at number 6. Talked about that potential based off what Pete Carroll did with Devin Witherspoon in Seattle a couple years ago. Maybe Jahdae Barron is that guy, but it felt like consensus was supporting Ashton Genty, the running back out of Boise State, to the Raiders at number 6. And maybe subconsciously there was a little fatigue there on my part. Maybe there's still a little bit of the, all right, value position doesn't meet at 6. And I was like, all right, what is something else that we could do that could fit both value and need for the Raiders? So I was like, all right, let's think outside the box here. Let's say they trade up from 6, and you can't trade up to number 3 and think you're going to get either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, right? You would have to trade to number 2, expecting the Titans to take Cam Ward at number 1. And I guess you really could only do it once the Browns are on the clock, because there is no guarantee that the Titans are taking Cam Ward. You have to be
sure. Yes.
Right. So this kind of move would have to be made at about 8:09 Eastern time, right? Once the 10 minutes have nearly elapsed and we know the pick is in and we know it's announced at 8:10, 8:11, Cam Ward goes to the Titans. Bam. Browns are on the clock. John Spytek gets on the phone with Andrew Berry. Hey, we've already talked about this deal. In theory, we're ready. Let's make it happen. 6-2 for the right to take Travis Hunter, a guy who, if we separate his skill sets, Bucky Brooks, would command a first-round pick as a wide receiver and a defensive back. This is a true 2-for-1. What more could you ask for in terms of trading up for value in this scenario, which I have the Raiders doing here in this situation?
There's so many things, so many precedents that the Raiders have done in the past that would pave the way for Travis Hunter being the guy. I don't know if you remember, not too long ago, but Khalil Mack was the first player to earn All-Pro recognition in 2 different positions.
That's right.
When he was in outside linebacker and a defensive end, and that was quite legendary at the time.
Yeah.
We also know that this franchise traditionally has always had a liking towards Heisman Trophy winners. And we go back and we dig through and we saw Charles Woodson, who was a teammate of mine. Tim Brown, who also was a teammate. They both had bronze trophies. Marcus Allen, who was a teammate of mine, not in the silver and black, but he also. And I think going back, maybe Jim Plunkett was a Heisman Trophy winner and kind of did it. So this has been one where the late Al Davis always had an affinity for those who have been recognized as being college football's best player. And so Travis Hunter would certainly be well on the radar. Then when we think about from a practical standpoint where we are right now, team has a need of a wide receiver and a defensive back. Team also has a coach who really became legendary at the college ranks by
Yes.
dealing with young people and putting them in a position to succeed, whatever that position was. So, as Pete Carroll is cementing his legacy as a Hall of Fame coach, why not take an impact player who can
Yes.
impact the game as a pass catcher and a defensive playmaker at a time when he is always talking about celebrating, look, win forever. Look, he's a professor at University of Southern
Still,
California
yes.
talking about win forever and those things. And some of that is teaching people how to be the best versions of themselves. Why not put Travis Hunter in a position where he can be the best version of himself between the lines, which means he plays offense, gets a swig of water, and then he comes back and plays defense
That's like a
like
water.
we're in high school.
Oh, I love it. Man, I should have had you write the caption to that pick. I mean, that was way better than anything else that I ultimately came up with there. That was fantastic. So I think, by the way, Jim Plunkett, 1970 Heisman Trophy winner. You're
How about
absolutely
that?
correct there. That's some great history to think about there too. Obviously, the Charles Woodson, comparison makes sense here, but I think Travis Hunter is going to play way more on offense than
Yep.
Charles Woodson, ever did. I think he's going to probably stay at corner, even though Charles, in the back end of his career, once he got to Green Bay, ended up moving to safety. I just think we're talking about someone with some of the best and most elite ball skills of any wide receiver or defensive back that we've seen come out in the draft in the last 5 to 10 years. Like, that to me is his superpower. The catch he made against North Dakota State as a wide receiver in the end zone in that first game,
Ridiculous.
I was like, I still don't know how it actually happened. Some of the plays he makes, snagging balls, mirroring receivers on routes over the middle, just like it's like he has super glue on his hands. We went out at the Colorado Showcase and watched him. He didn't even have gloves on. Like,
Yeah.
he has that
Yeah.
extreme confidence in his natural plucking ability. Like, that's my best way. We're not plucking feathers here. We're plucking footballs. And he is so dang good at it. So look, I think when you go up and down the Raiders depth chart as it stands right now, and it's by no means a finished product, doesn't have to be until week 1. And even then it's still a work in progress. Brock Bowers, I think, regardless of what happens here, is pass catcher number 1. I mean, he certainly is right now as it stands with Trey Tucker, 3rd-round pick 2 years ago, Jacoby Myers, the free agent acquisition from the Patriots, good players. But I think Travis Hunter comes in at the wide receiver position and is immediately the alpha dog in that room in terms of elite skill set, most elite player. I think the same could be said in the defensive back room when you're looking at this. Corey Bennett, again, 4th-round pick 2 years ago, has been a good player. Is going to continue to be a good player. DeCamerion Richardson, 4th-round pick last year. What do we think about him? Breaking in a new nickel corner and Darnay Holmes. I don't view Pete Carroll as the type of coach that's going to be afraid of allowing Travis Hunter to play himself out of one of those positions full time. You know what I mean? Like, let's give it all to him, and then let's move it back let's pull back if we have to. But why not capitalize on the true 2-for-1 that you're getting here? Does that make sense?
It 100% makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about elite players, and there is something to when you rebuilding a franchise that you're looking for blue chip players, guys that are regarded as potential Pro Bowlers, All Pro players to anchor and form the nucleus of your team. When you look at the guys who already have blue potential in a Raiders uniform, Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, there's some others that are French players that have the potential. Christian Wilkins comes to mind. Well, now if you add a guy who is a blue player, potentially at 2 spots,
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, to go with a quarterback who comes in and has been a blue player, earning Pro Bowl recognition, and that would be Geno Smith. You're now closing the gap on your division rivals and putting yourself in a position to be in the tournament as one of those teams vying for the title. When we talk about Bill Polian, Hall of Fame executive, we're talking about, hey, championship teams are comprised of 8 to 12 blue chip players and then a bunch of really good players around them. You're now upping the odds of your team getting into that category by having a Travis Hunter join a team that already has some emerging blue players that are still in the prime of their careers.
Okay. So this all, I mean, look, I think you can certainly make a case for it, like on the field, right? But now let's make a case for what it would look like logistically to actually happen here. The draft pick trade value chart. That's one of the things that obviously comes into play here when we're talking about what it would take to move up or down in a draft and what would feel like the proper compensation. So let's talk about the draft pick value. It goes, the number one overall pick is worth 3,000 points, and then it goes down. The 32nd overall pick is worth 590 points, and there are point values associated to each pick in between. And then it also has values for second round picks all the way down through the 7th and the final pick, Mr. Irrelevant. So the first pick overall is worth 3,000. The Cleveland Browns pick at number 2 is worth 2,600. The Raiders pick at number 6 is worth 1,600. So from 2,600 to 1,600, you're trying to make up 1,000 points. Basically, a pick somewhere in the middle of the draft next year in the first round is going to be worth about 1,000 points if you look at future picks. So what you're talking here is to move from 6 to 2, you're obviously giving up the 6th overall. But then what you're doing is probably giving up a first round pick next year. Or if you look at where the Raiders are picking in the second round this year, you're talking about 530 points assigned to the 37th overall pick. So you would need to come up with around another 470 picks, depending on, whether Andrew Berry's going to try to stick you with a premium to get to number 2, which he certainly has the right to do, right? You want to get the best deal for your team. And they might be thinking of taking Travis Hunter. So in order to give up that player, maybe he's going to ask for a little something on top of what the trade chart might say. So I think you're looking at a 1 in 26, or you're looking at two second round picks. Second round pick this year, second round pick next year, and maybe like a 4th, 5th round swap or something, some kind of pick swap down the road to kind of make the thing work for the Browns to do it. So let's talk about the basis points there to make up that 1,000. Would you rather, if you're the Raiders, give up a 26 first rounder or give up consecutive second round picks this year and next year? How would you view that?
Ooh, I would give up consecutive picks this year and next year. Okay. And the reason why is we're kind of seeing a leveling out with things of the transfer portal and those things that I would rather, I'm okay giving those things up, because to me, there's this thing that we can talk about, quality of quantity. I would rather have the quality of a blue chip player than the quantity of some decent players. I want to make sure that if I feel like a person has star power, give me the star, because ultimately when we look around the league, star power is what really helps you win. The Kansas City Chiefs have been in the mix because they have a star. And they have a handful of stars that kind of carry everybody else. In Kansas City, it's been Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones in the last few years that have really sustained that team to help them be relevant. You think about Philadelphia and their emergence, it's the stars that have done it. So for the Raiders, look, man, the first thing you have to do before you can think about being a title team is, how do we win the division? Well, that means we need to have star power that can allow us to go toe-to-toe. Being able to give up whatever we need to get up to get a Travis Hunter or another blue chip player, that is what happens. That is what is necessary to be able to put you in that conversation.
Okay, so a couple things on that front for me. I'm okay with giving up a first rounder in 26, because the way that I justify that is, again, I kind of mentioned it at the top when we're talking about this thing. If I could get Travis Hunter, the receiver, in this year's draft, I would take him in the first round, take him in the top 10. If I could get Travis Hunter, the defensive back, in next year's draft, I would take him in the top 10. Ooh. I'm getting both here. And so giving up a first rounder next year, I kind of feel like I got 2 first round picks right here with Travis Hunter in this trade. Now, the other thing is, let's identify if we're able to, if the Browns want the 26th first rounder, which leaves us with our second round pick this year. Let's talk about some potential pairings. Okay. So we've got Travis Hunter there. The one that came, to my mind was, all right, we didn't get Ashton Jeanty at 6, which has been a popular thought. Let's come back in a very strong and talented, deep running back class. Let's go get somebody that Chip Kelly's extremely familiar with down a downhill basher
Oh,
from Ohio State
Oh.
in Quinshon Judkins. And let's
Mm.
now get Geno Smith, Travis Hunter at wide receiver, Brock Bowers at tight end, and Quinshon Judkins at running back.
Mm.
Is that something you might be interested in?
I mean, I would look that you can sign me up for that. I would take that and put that on the layaway plan and feel good about it. And the reason why I would feel good about the entire group, because it is important as we go through draft weekend. A lot of times people will try and segment it out and be like, oh, the first round pick. But really, it's the cumulative total of what we assemble that makes us feel great about the class.
Yeah.
And if I now have Travis Hunter, who would be, look, the number one at wide receiver and cornerback on most boards. I have Quinshon Judkins, who has really impressed people throughout this process, particularly after he put on a stellar combine that forced people to go back and look at the tape and see him have a 1,000-yard season after being a very decorated runner at Ole Miss. There's a lot to like about him. And the familiarity with Chip Kelly knowing how to utilize him, how to either feature him or to place him in a rotation that allows the silver and black to get the best out of him. Man, sign me up for that all day. It gives Pete Carroll the kind of offense that he wants to have, one that is run-oriented, but is complementary in terms of being able to use play-action passing game, control the middle of the field, take care of the quarterback, create explosive plays off of all those things. It works, and it works in, look, man, we're in fantasy land right now, but it works in a bunch of different ways. But it is something that we talk about a realistic possibility. Yeah, it can be realistic that you get it done if you're able to give up, if you're willing to give up the capital that you need to give up to put yourself in a position to make it happen.
Okay, I want to get a couple of potential other pairings from you here in just a second, Buck, but I also want to ask you, if given the choice of Quinshon Judkins or TreVeyon Henderson, how do you think the Raiders might view that? They are a little bit different, right? You have a little bit more of the home run threat with TreVeyon Henderson, although, again, the combine time for Quinshon Judkins, made you feel a lot better about, the overall speed factor with Quinshon. How would you view that if you're the Raiders?
I think you have to, one, look at what you have already in the stable. So they signed Raheem Mostert to come in. Older player, but look, he's someone, when he's been at his best, he has some pop still. It's amazing. He defies the odds as a veteran player that still has the burst. Well, I want to have someone that kind of complements that, like who works together. To me, I'm still more likely to go with Judkins in this conversation. I prefer the bigger back, the run heavy, the thicker guy that I can slam up in between the tackles to allow me to kind of set the tone for how we want to operate on offense. I would still go Judkins over Henderson in the scenario with the Raiders based on what they need.
Okay. So that's a running back scenario there. If you were dead set on getting a back in Genty at 6, you didn't get it because I moved you up to number 2 to get Travis Hunter. Again, a generational type of talent. Like, that's why you trade up in the draft, to get those types of players. He's one of the only players I view as worthy of trading up to get in this entire draft anyway. So that makes sense there. Now, if you're not going running back in that second round to pair with Travis Hunter, is there a position or a player in that position that makes some sense to you?
I think about Pete Carroll, and I think about he's a long-time defensive coach.
Yes.
But really a DB coach.
Yes.
And I just understand, look, Jack Jones goes out the door. They re-signed Darnay Holmes. I'm just thinking, man, at some point they need corners. They need cover guys. And they're going to need a safety because they lose Trevor Merrick. He left to go to California. I'm thinking in the secondary, man, you have to be able to find a cover corner, someone that can kind of help you. And I'm thinking, look, we're talking second round. We're thinking these fringe guys. So I'm thinking, look, Trey Amos is going to be right on the line.
Yes.
In terms of like Ole Miss, when you watch him, he plays a style that really fits the brand. Handsy, physical, tenacious, ran really well at the combine. He is really, really intriguing. Someone I like. And then the other guy would be Ravel from
Savon Ravel. Yeah, from ECU.
Ravel.
Yeah.
You may get a bit of a discount given the injury history that puts him squarely in the mix, and depending upon the medicals and how it plays out, he's a really good player. He's long. And when I think about, you always go and you dig into the history. When I think about the LOB, the Legion of Boom that Pete Carroll had, and the length that they had on the perimeter, Ravel fits the bill in terms of the style of corner that he plays with. And then the kid from Florida State, Thomas.
Oh, Azarie Thomas. Yeah.
Azarie Thomas would also be another
Big,
tall,
long corner.
long
Yeah.
corner that fits.
Yeah.
Think about the Richard Sherman profile, that Brandon Browner. Like I just
Yep.
think about when Pete Carroll has been able to play the defense that he wants.
Shoot,
There's a
Reek Woolen.
model. Yes.
Big dude. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a model.
Azarie is not quite as fast as Reek
Definitely
was, but he was kind of on along the lines of Richard Sherman in terms
Yeah,
of
Richard Sherman, Brandon Brown,
athleticism. Yeah.
those guys weren't fast, and so the pressure was on them to win at the line of scrimmage because they couldn't run down the field with those guys, so they had to beat them up.
Yeah. Okay. So I like that defensive back land there. I was also thinking, just taking best player available here. Like if you're a defensive, this is a defensive tackle draft. Like
Mhm.
Derek Harmon sitting there.
Oh,
Um,
great
right.
player.
If somehow Walter Nolan slips out of the first round, talking about TJ Sanders, you know what, another guy who we haven't talked about a lot, and he's probably not in this discussion right at the top of the second round, but Savion Jones from LSU is
Mhm.
another guy. Princely Uman Mielen, is a little bit lighter, but is maybe more of an edge player. Like there's some guys that kind of fit in that framework of early
Mhm.
in the second round, I think that are going to really, really help you. And then look, let's just talk about this. What if Carson Schlesinger's sitting there at linebacker?
Mm.
And
Yeah,
like
I
you just,
mean
you lost Robert Spillane. I know you went and got Devin White and Landon Roberts, but man, now you've got a big time backer that you've got, to go along with Amari Burney and Tommy Eichenberg as kind of homegrown players at that position that could come in and play for you right away.
Rhett, you just talk about instincts, awareness, toughness. And I
Yeah.
know Spillane was not there with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll didn't play with him, but I just think
Yeah.
about how he commanded the middle of the field in Patrick Graham's defense. And
Yeah.
even though you talk about those veterans coming over, there's just something about watching the UCLA standout just dominate sideline to sideline, making plays, just being at it. And the fact that he's only done it for a year and is still learning the game and exhibiting those kinds of qualities, man,
I
there's just so
like
much.
that one too.
Yeah, there's so much to like about that.
Now, look, if Malachi Starks is sitting there, I mean, like it's a run up, and that's not going to look. It's not going to happen. But if one of those safeties is there that we're talking about, because look, safety is one of those positions where you could see it getting pushed back, right? You could see it get pushed down in favor of the defensive tackle. Somebody doesn't want to wait till the second round, to chance that a guy's not going to be there. Offensive linemen typically get pushed up into the top end, in the back end of the first round. That Josh Connerly finds his way into the first round. If let's say. A couple other these offensive linemen that we've been talking about throughout this process, end up getting pushed up in there. Remember when Cole Strange ended up in the back end of the first round? Nobody really thought that pushes another good player down into the second round. So again, you just got to kind of be ready for anything in those first 10 picks of the second round. Now you're going to have a whole day to figure it out, right? Because the draft is going to end after the first 32 picks, and then kind of have about 12 hours to think about it before we start getting everybody back on the clock again for the second round, where we'll see the Browns actually make the first pick of the second round. So look, just a little food for thought there, right? You know what I mean?
Just tasty.
Yeah, just a little something. Boy, do we have a big teaser for you right now. Coming up next week here on the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. General Manager John Spytek going to jump right in between our two screens right here and give us a few minutes of his time as we will sit here about 2 weeks from the draft at that point, or even less, as we get set for what the Raiders are going to do in Green Bay. Maybe I'll run my Travis Hunter scenario by him and see if see what he has to say. But look, I think that that's a fun way to look at things, and obviously John will have a much more practical way of viewing the draft, and has done a great job together with Pete Carroll and kind of reshaping this roster and building a foundation of success for the future in Las Vegas. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us here on this episode of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. For Bucky Brooks, I am Rhett Lewis. We look forward to seeing you right back here next week for our conversation with John Spytek.